All right, so we're back with Johnny Hiland again. Hey, you were talking about Steve Vai. I actually have the CD that you did on the Favorite Nations label of Steve Vai's. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. Well, funny thing is, Jim, is right after the whole, Opry performance and the Ryman and Gary Chapman show and all that stuff, man. What was great is I met my first manager, Mac Wilson, who actually worked with Danny Gatt, knew Danny,
Mm-hmm.
and man, he was really pivotal in getting me started with, working with companies, going to NAMM shows and getting endorsed by companies and stuff like that. And, he even hooked us up with a guy named Chip Woody in Nashville who allowed me to write songs and go in and demo instrumentals in Nashville, just down the street from my apartment where I lived. And through a rehearsal of the very first Johnny Hiland band, he was actually holding his cell phone up in the control room window. And I was thinking, who's he holding his phone up for? Well, come to find out it was Steve Vai.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, man. And he goes, yeah, man, Vai he's invited you to a G3 show. Wants you to get up and play with him. And
wow.
And he said he wants to talk to you. So next thing I know, I went and performed with G3, which was great. Now, you saw the picture upstairs.
Yes. Could you talk about who all was on stage?
Yeah, well, that was Yngwie Malmsteen and Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, and Neil Sean came that night and also got up when I did and played. So
nice.
It was so fun. And but anyway, that whole meeting spawned my first record deal, and I have to give such great thanks to Steve Vai for really being the first guy who was a hero, obviously. I mean,
yes.
Such a hero to all kinds of guitar players.
Yeah. All four of those guys that you mentioned.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. But to be on stage with those guys, but then to actually sign with Favored Nations and be a part of Steve's label was such a dream come true, because really a kid like me from Maine, still not knowing really what I wanted to do, he was prompting me and inspiring me to write my first instrumentals and to be at Chip's studio just recording like a madman.
Yeah.
And, of course, then Peter Collins got involved, thanks to Mac. And, Peter Collins produced Rush and Metallica and all kinds of bands.
Yeah.
And so he was the executive, or the producer, and Steve Vai executive produced that record.
And I see on here Pat Torpey.
Yeah, Pat Torpey from Mr. Big, yeah.
Yes. Torpey, I believe is how it's pronounced. Billy Sheehan.
Yep.
Bill Holloman with Danny Gatton.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what do you remember that was one just crucial piece of advice that Steve Vai gave you? What do you think?
Always base your songs on a melody that people can hum and whistle.
I see.
Always, he's like, dude, it ain't about how long and big your solo is. It's that melody.
Gotcha.
Because the melody is the driving force behind the song and gives you a reason to do a solo anyway.
True.
But he's like, you really need to have a strong melody in everything you write. That was the most pivotal advice Steve ever gave me.
I see.
That really pushed me. I remember sending him instrumental after instrumental, and he'd go, that's great, bud, but yeah, that one's great too, but just more melody, brother. And what I grew to find was the solos were shrinking and the melody was getting bigger and bigger. But man, thanks to the advice Steve gave me and all of the inspiration Joe Satriani brought, because Joe's such an amazing instrumental writer too.
Yeah.
It was guys like that brought this chicken picker to life as far as being a recording artist. So
gotcha.
Yeah, and Peter Collins was a great help too, and recording with Billy Sheehan and Pat Torpey, both in Mr. Big.
Yeah. And
then having Danny Gatton's band leader there playing sax and keyboards, man, what a dream come true that was.
No doubt.
Yeah, so fun.
No doubt. I work in a band right now called Beeswax. I left a band that I was in 17 years. I quit them last May. Basically gone a lot every weekend, a lot of driving. So Buddy Allen and Cheap River Band with those guys, great musicians, and really enjoyed the band. But I decided to quit, and several months back, me and Dave Albright and Jeffrey Joe Buckland formed a three-piece band called Beeswax. So we're doing that right now. But another gig of mine is working at Showtime.
Yes.
Yeah, in Beckley, and they have a store in Bridgeport, West Virginia as well. Got Bill there, Dave is there, and the crew. Nick up in Bridgeport.
Showtime, I'm coming to visit because I'm still a music store junkie.
Well, it's a great store. They have a lot of great stuff. Bill, knows his stuff on running sound. Another gig of mine is working at Kroger's. I work at Deli.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Rick and Natalie back there and the whole crew.
Nice.
Yeah, but one of the guys back there, Larry, he's a big Joe Satriani fan, so he I think has seen and maybe met Joe as well. So did you get a chance to hang with some of the guys, Joe or Ingve?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ingve not as much, but Joe and Steve, yeah, I got to hang with those guys pretty good.
Oh, nice.
But obviously more so Steve than any of them, because he was so gracious to me. And but what was great though, man, is Billy Sheehan wanted, after we jammed live, Billy looked at Steve and said, "Man, I want to play bass on his record, man." So cool that Billy's been such a great friend and
monster player.
Yeah, just he's one of the most insane bass players on the planet.
Yeah.
Along with Stu Ham, who I worked with Shrapnel, and Mike Varney, and we'll get to that. But I guess what I'm getting at, man, is to be here again, that young boy from Maine that really didn't even still know what I wanted.
Yeah.
To be hanging with those guys backstage at the Ryman. And getting to play with them live, that was just so fun, man.
No doubt.
What a dream come true.
Yeah. When you mentioned going to Nashville and you got to play at the Ryman for that first time, essentially you could have said, "Man, I've had my dream. Okay, now I'm going to head back to Maine." But you have that God-given talent, obviously.
Yeah, but Jim, there's a little story behind that too, though. After my first year in Nashville, I did contemplate staying or going back to Maine.
Really?
Yeah, and so I was sitting at the bar at Roberts after playing one night, and I was telling Gail, the bartender, that I said, "Man, I'm thinking about going back home," and I heard this voice say, "You ain't going nowhere." And I was like, "What?" And so I see this guy in a, crinkled up cowboy hat, snakeskin boots with duct tape around it. Really cool. I mean, just a real cool dude,
Right.
I'm thinking, who is this guy? And he comes back and he's like, he comes over and sits down next to me and buys me a Coke or whatever. And we just sat there and talked. And he said, "Johnny Hiland, you can't go home, dude. You got too much, Nashville, this is you, man. You need to be here."
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, well, gosh, man. And then I find out later that he was Hank Williams' grandson, Hank Williams III.
Oh my gosh.
Now, funny story about that is, so Hank kind of helped keep me in Nashville, along with my dear brother, Mr. Ronnie Lutrick, who was pivotal in that as well.
Bass player.
Yeah, who played with Don Kelly. Yeah, but Ronnie and I would go, do some, sit-in parts with other folks, and Ronnie would get up and sing, and I'd play guitar with him, and we did a Blues Connection record later.
Oh, wow.
But Ronnie's such a dear brother. I love him to death, and smoking bass player, smoking vocalist. But anyway, I was at that stage, man, where, I just thought of going home, and Hank's like, "Nope, you're not." So I said, "Well, man, you better, you're Hank Williams' grandson. I know you got a record deal. You got to be." He's like, "Well, yeah, man. I'll get you on some records." I said, "Yeah." Well, then his first album come out with Curb, and I wasn't on it. So when he come into Robert's studio, I was like, "Yeah, thanks for letting me play on that record." And he was like, "No, man, and I realized and learned from him that, usually when an artist signs to a major label, there's not much artist say in who plays on what, and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
So from the second record on, Hank had me a part of all of the country records he put out since then.
Nice.
And so I've played on probably 8 or 9 Hank 3 records. And
That's
it's just been awesome.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff. Now, have you ever met Hank Jr.?
No, I have not. Well, actually, when I was a little boy, but I have not really got a chance to hang or anything with Hank Jr. But I love him though.
A band that I was in years ago called Borderline. We got back together in 2010 to do a CD of these songs that Eugene Lanham wrote. So we got back together, and so we did the CD. This is it actually, Borderline CD. We did this, and a guy was that we knew said, "Hey man, I know a connection for Hank Jr." So we said, "This is awesome." So we got the CD. Yeah, I'll mail this to this dude, and he can give it to, try to get it in the hands of Hank Jr. Of course, that never really played out. I know it's tough. You hear stuff like that, and you're thinking you get your hopes up, but you just keep on going. But anyhow, that was, man. Yeah, it was a great experience to getting to finally do that, because we'd done these songs that Eugene wrote for years, and talked about doing the CD for years, but finally got to do it. But I have 2 other CDs, speaking of CDs, of yours great CDs, all fired up that you did at Mike Varney's studio, and then Standing Strong.
Well, Mike Varney, being Mr. Shrapnel Records, I was so honored that after, Vai's Favorite Nations album ended up going digital. And so my second album, called Loud and Proud, I released independently. And then after that, I was still just an independent artist, and my buddy Jason Macedo hooked me up with Mike Varney, and got to talk to him, and literally, man, I was already writing new songs.
Yeah. So
literally talked to Varney in December, and by mid-January, we were out at Cotati, California, at Prairie Sun, recording that All Fired Up album.
Awesome.
With Stu Hamm and Steve Vai's drummer, Jeremy Colson.
Oh, yeah.
And so much fun on that album, and so thank you, brother Mike Varney. I love you, brother. And so proud to be the only real chicken picker on Shrapnel, except for Michael Lee Firkins, who's a beast. But Jim, it's funny, brother. I was living a dream, man. I was going out, sitting in with George Clinton and P-Funk, and then flying home and playing on a Toby Keith record, and then going out and, doing the show with Sammy Hagar and Ted Nugent and those guys. And
I've seen a video with you on stage with Sammy.
Yeah, man, I love Sammy Hagar. Such a great guy. But
did you mention Ted Nugent?
Yes, I did. I love Brother
Paul.
Ted.
I've seen a picture of you with Les Paul.
Yes. Yeah, thanks to Mac, I got to go up and play a bunch with Les at the Iridium. And
I know someone that's a really big Blake Shelton fan. Have you ever got to work with him?
Nope, I don't believe so.
What about Rebecca Lynn Howard?
Yes.
Randy Travis?
Randy Travis, yeah. Worked on a Randy Travis album.
Awesome.
Yeah, Toby Keith, and man, the list is just huge of the sessions I got to do. But
yeah, we should go jam here in a little bit.
We need to do that, brother. But I guess, what I want people to know, Jim, is over the years, brother, every dream I've ever had has already come true. And so now, through the good Lord, I dare to dream bigger.
Yeah.
But moving to Virginia, man, I kind of had to get away from the rat race of Nashville changing, and let's face it, change is inevitable, but hey, man, when the real country music started going away, Johnny had to leave town.
Yeah.
So now I'm in Virginia, and thanks to my dear brother, Mr. Kenny Thurman, I've got the Blind Man Studio here, and another dream come true, So I'm literally living a dream every day of my life, and so proud of that, man, and to get to hang out with great guys like you.
Well, we appreciate that so much, Heather and I. And, as far as, Nashville now, I know it's changed a lot since you first moved there. And, things do change.
Yeah.
So eventually it may come back around to where country is the focal point.
I thought, man, when Sturgill Simpson came out and, Tyler Childers was hitting the scene, I thought, man, it was going to start really coming back, but it really never did. It was almost like they became, even like bands like the Mavericks. Love the Mavericks.
Yeah.
But they, those kind of people kind of merged into the Americana market.
Okay.
Which in turn still meant that real country music was kind of out the window.
I see.
And so I just said, man, now is the time. And, after living in Nashville 22 years, brother, I lost all of my family. My mom and dad, my grandparents, my brother and sister are still around, and I have a few sets of aunts and uncles, but Kimmy's family, my lovely wife, Kimmy, we were married in 2005.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, man, the last time I got to see my mom and dad alive was at our wedding.
Wow.
Yeah. But I told Kimmy, I said, Nashville's going through the change. But I said, your family members, your dad's still around, Aunt Joanne's around. I said, baby, have time with these people while you can.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want to be the guy that's keeping you in Nashville while I'm supposedly living this dream every day.
Yeah.
I said, I've been through so much. I've been through some great times, some bad times, but I said, let's go up and be with family.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're in Virginia.
Yeah.
And now my dear brother Kenny Thurman, I had no idea he lived in Danville, man.
Wow.
And Kenny, man, he worked with Mike Henderson and the Blue Bloods, Vince Gill, Joe Diffie, Mark Chestnut. The list goes on and on.
Amazing.
Phil Vassar. So I still have my ties with KT being up here with me. And so I really do believe God just answered another prayer for me.
Sounds awesome. And family is everything. So.
It is. It really is.
Johnny, I thank you for this video so much,
Shoot,
sir.
yeah, buddy. Well, I appreciate you so much, Jim. I really do.
We need to check out your gear here in a little bit and maybe do a jam.
I would love that, man. Let's do it.
Let's do that.